This isn't about just understanding the difference between story selling and data selling. It's about using them in the right sequence. The simplest way to think about this is there are 4 parts to influence a decision. The first is story. This is the hook. Next, the insight. Insight is important because you want to tell people what that story actually means. The third thing, data. And at the end, this is the part most people skip. That's when the outcome becomes a behavior and not just a story you're telling. Imagine someone knocking on your door, and before you can even say hello, they start listing statistics. X% of forests are being cleared every year. X cubic feet of oxygen lost. X number of species at risk. It's all true. But how do you actually feel? Do you lean in, or are you looking for a way out of this conversation? Now imagine something else totally different. The same person, but this time he says this. Once upon a time, there was a boy who used to spend every afternoon in the forest behind his house. That's where he explored. He imagined. He felt free. But the forest was eventually cut down and it became a strip mall. His world disappeared, and so did something in him. And when he grew up, now let me ask you again, are you more likely to pay attention now? Do you want to find out why he grew up or what happened? The thing is not one or the other. Most people just get the order completely wrong. In this video, I'll show you the biggest mistake people make when trying to influence a decision, what stories and data actually do to your brain, and a simple framework that uses both in the right sequence. What you just experienced wasn't random. It was 2 different ways of presenting the same idea. One led with data and the other with story. And if you're like most people, one of those pulled you in and the other didn't. You see, this shows up everywhere, in sales calls, in marketing, in how we introduce ourselves, even in how we try to get people to believe in something. Most experts, especially smart ones, default to data. They believe that if the numbers are strong enough, the decision will just follow. So they lead with statistics, case studies, proof points. And on paper, it makes sense. But in reality, it often falls flat because the human brain doesn't work the way we think it does. So what do stories do? They do something very different. They don't just inform you, they involve you. So when you hear a story, your brain treats it like an experience. And when that happens, a few things happen. Dopamine can increase, whether there's attention or curiosity, it keeps you engaged and makes you pay attention. Oxytocin can also increase when you build empathy, connection, and trust. And emotional arousal strengthens memory and coding, which means you're far more likely to remember it. And that's why when you have a good story, it sticks. Neuroscience research from Antonio Damasio shows that emotion plays a central role in decision making. It means that if you don't feel something, you cannot make a decision. You require emotion to make one. Now, data plays a very different role. Data doesn't create the decision. It helps the brain explain the decision. So when you hear numbers, charts, and statistics, your brain shifts into a more analytical mode. The prefrontal cortex becomes more active. You start evaluating, comparing, rationalizing. But this process is slower. It takes a lot of effort. And it usually only kicks in after your brain decides that it's worthwhile to do that. It is a lot of work. Data plays a different role in the way that we make decisions. So what actually happens is this. A story creates that feeling, and that feeling sends a signal. This matters. And then when you introduce data, your brain uses it to build a logical, defensible story around that feeling. Not to decide, but to justify that decision. You feel your way to a decision and think your way to a justification. This is why data alone just struggles, because without emotion, there is no dopamine spike. There's no attention. And so you need to have the emotional signal so your brain can tag it as important and you can encode it, you can remember it, because if not, you just quickly forget it. You need your brain to have a reason to care. So I'm going to share a framework next. But before I do that, I want to let you know about Influence System Mastery. It's a place where I help experts turn their skills and experience into income without becoming a creator or an influencer. It's building an influence system for compounding opportunities and clients. Go to influencesystemmastery.com and go check it out. You can also see in the show notes and in the description. So let's step back for a moment. What does this actually look like in practice? Because this isn't about just understanding the difference between story selling and data selling. It's about using them in the right sequence. The simplest way to think about this is that there are 4 parts to influence a decision. The first is story. This is the hook. You start with the story because it changes what's happening in the brain. It uses your brain. We create attention and it sparks curiosity and it makes someone feel something. And that feeling is so important because it sends the signal. It means pay attention to this because without the signal, nothing else would matter. Next, the insight. Insight is important because you want to tell people what that story actually means. You tell a story and you say, hey, this is what it's about. This is what most people get wrong, or here's why this matters. Because once someone feels something, the brain immediately tries to make sense of it. Give them a reason. Give them the insight that gives it meaning. The third thing then is data. Data comes in now because now when you introduce the data, this is where most people already sort of understand you and want to know about it more because now it matters. Your brain is actually primed and ready for this. And it's thinking, okay, if this is true, show me what the data says. Show me what it means. And it gives the brain a way to explain why the feeling exists. It turns a feeling into something logical, credible, and defensible. And at the end, close it back with a story or call to action. And this is the part most people skip, but it's actually what drives action because you're not just there to remind someone of something. You're not just giving them a statistic. We want to help them do something, put them into a future version of themselves where they've made the decision. And that's where things start to change. That's when the outcome becomes a behavior and not just a story you're telling, so that their action next will feel very natural to the whole thing that you talked to them about. Remember, story, insight, data, back to story. Now let's go back to the example at the beginning. The statistics about deforestation, they weren't wrong. It just came too early. There was no emotional anchor. There was no reason for our brain to care. But once you heard the story, now the data would mean something. So this is what you need to do and understand. The goal isn't to choose between story selling and data selling. It's understanding the role each one plays. Because in the end, people don't act on what they understand. They act on what they feel. And then they justify it with what they understand. If you've enjoyed this episode, you have to meet Matt Suka. Matt is a leading expert in sales psychology and behavioral science. And in that episode, he breaks down a powerful idea. People don't say no because your offer isn't good enough. They say no because something is getting in the way. We dive into this concept of the zone of acceptance and how small strategic shifts can remove the hidden psychological barrier that stop people from saying yes. If you want to design smarter customer journeys, reduce friction, and ethically influence, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. So if you're watching it on YouTube, just click here. And if you're listening on a podcast player, you'll find the link in the show notes. I'll see you in the next episode.